honors in my long life. When I was 78 years old and Boston celebrated the turn of the century, 1900 I mean, I was asked to speak at a midnight service for the whole city. And a few years afterward, at age 81, I was appointed chaplain to the U.S. Senate. As many as were the honors heaped upon me in my own day, I never dreamed that I would have a statue and be remembered even in the 21st century. The statue itself is certainly a flattering likeness. It makes me out to be more majestic than I was, perhaps, but it captures my rough and craggy features well enough. But the real reason I am so happy to be a part of this garden tableau is that it reminds me what a child of Boston I truly was. I was born here in 1822 on School Street, just a short walk from here. And I grew up on Boston's narrow streets. Though I spent time across the river at Harvard at its divinity school, and though I spent many happy years in my first ministry in Worcester, in truth, my whole life has been in service to this city and trying to be as good a citizen of its traditions as I could. For more than half a century, I was a Unitarian minister and then minister emeritus in the south end of the South Congregational Church, and I saw generations of children grow and then bring their own children to its pews. I worked hard for this city, and even when I put pen to paper to write stories for a wider audience to read, I generally wrote them for a magazine born in Boston, The Atlantic. You may have heard of my story entitled The Man Without a Country. Out of the more than 20 books I wrote, and hundreds of articles and short works of fiction, and Lord knows thousands of sermons, it is the piece of writing that has best withstood the test of time. A writer is lucky to be remembered for even one thing, when so many are not remembered at all. And if by means of this one story I have helped readers around the world sense the power of patriotism, not shallow chauvinism, but genuine and abiding love of country, then I am happy. The tragic tale of Philip Nolan, who renounced his country and learned the hard way what a severe sacrifice he had made, helped a nation through a great civil war. And I can't help but wonder, so many years on, if the simple lesson it teaches is not needed today more than ever. I liked being a minister because I loved the people of Boston, and it was a joy to serve them. But one other piece of my writing in particular sent ripples far beyond the south end of Boston, all through New England and the nation. I wrote a story called 10 times 1 is 10, about a man who so deeply affected and inspired 10 friends that in his memory those 10 friends resolved to live their own lives with the same spirit of generosity and courage and quiet heroism that he had exhibited. And that each of these individuals in turn inspired another 10, and so on and so on. To my utter surprise and delight, the story assumed a life of its own among my readers. And during my last years, there arose powerfully effective charitable groups calling themselves Lend a Hand. The name comes from the small motto that I wrote for 10 times 1 is 10. Look up and not down. Look forward and not back. Look out and not in. Lend a hand. And I'd ask you all to say it with me, if you will. I'll say the lines you repeat after me. Look up and not down.
Look up and not down.
Look forward and not back.
Look forward and not back.
Look out and not in.
Look out and not in.
Lend a hand.
Lend a hand.
Now, what does this motto mean? Look up and not down, that is faith. Look forward and not back, that is hope. Look out and not in, that is charity. Lend a hand. To me, that is the essence of religion, what religion is ultimately good for, when changeable ceremonies and creeds are stripped away, to be the best citizens and neighbors and spouses and children and parents that we can be, and to help others do the same. Boston is no longer the city of the Puritans, and no longer the stronghold of the Unitarians and the Transcendentalists, but it has always been a city on a hill, and it will continue to be so as long as Bostonians continue to strive to be and do their best, not only as individuals, but as a community, showing the world build a better society by looking out for each other. Now I must conclude and thank you once more for this honor. The great honor to a child of Boston who was privileged to call this city home and make even the smallest of differences in people's lives here, to be allowed to stand in this welcoming spot across the years, in the sun and rain and snow, to gaze upon the beauty of this magnificent public garden, across to where the statue of the great George Washington faces out towards the Back Bay and to an unimaginable future. Who could possibly have dreamt such a marvel? A statue is a weighty thing. The decision to erect and maintain a statue is not to be made lightly, as they last a long time and they teach us our values. So again, I thank you. Long may this garden and this city prosper.